Hi, welcome everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for your patience. I'm Sreya Bhattacharya, a senior program manager with Dalberg. I lead our innovation programming. Thank you for joining us today for this amazing webinar. It's a really interesting topic. AI has really been taking over so much of our lives, so much of the conversation, and so much in terms of how we can embrace and work with AI and understand it better. So, really interested today and excited to have some amazing speakers who can help us unpack this a little bit, bring different perspectives, and ignite a conversation to really understand AI's impact on the art world. How do we see that unfolding? Where do we see the opportunities? Where are the things we need to know? And how do we really work together? Let me start off by introducing YLab. YLab is an incredible program. It's an art tech innovation program housed within one of the largest museums in the Southeast Asian region. The YLab program within the National Gallery Singapore is focused on bringing art tech solutions to the prototyping phase to really create a space and provide the resources for early stage prototypes to really bring their ideas to life, work together with some amazing experts within the gallery to bring those to life and bring them to the public to test them out. In addition to that, the YLab program actually really is also about creating a community of diverse individuals that are interested in the topic of art and technology. How do we stay at the forefront of it? How do we exchange ideas? How do we really lean in and help each other? Today, I'm excited to bring to us a slew of some amazing panelists. Our panelists today were joined by Professor See-Kiong from NUS. He is a professor of practice at the School of Computing, as well as the director of AI technology. Professor, I'll hand over to you to shortly introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone. Thanks. My name is See-Kiong. I have two roles. One of my role is being a professor where I conduct research in advancing AI, in pushing the boundary of AI technology, including the one we are talking about today. My other role is as a director of AI technology, where I try to create a research program that turn all these AI research advances into social and economic impact for Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you with us to bring us some interesting perspectives on the technology itself. Our second speaker today is amazing Vasey, who's joining us today to bring us interesting perspectives on the way the technology is changing the experience for the artists. What does that mean? How do we even get beyond that? How is art itself changing? Kay is the Chief Connecting Officer at MeshMinds. Kay, I'll hand over to you to briefly introduce yourself, please.
Hello, so glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Over the last 6 years, we've been working at the intersection of art, technology, and sustainability. And the question that gets me out of bed every day is how can we protect our culture and the environment in the digital age? And working at the forefront of XR, it does incorporate lots of AI technology. So most recently, we've been working with the Roblox and Fortnite platforms, and really excited to share with you some new developments in AI there as well. Thank you.
Amazing, so welcome. And last but not the least, we have the amazing Greg Wood with us, who is the practice lead of user experience at NCS Group. AI is definitely going to change the way users experience art, so really, really happy to hear your perspectives. Over to you, Greg, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much, and hi everyone. So yes, I'm practice lead for digital experience, which covers everything from user experience, UI design, right through to all of the XR stuff that Kay and the team are doing, and also AI implementations in real life situations. We've got a team of about 150 here in Singapore and 200 around the region, and we cover everything from behavioral science, why do people do what they do in the first place, right down to obsessive button design to actually get people to click on the button after all. So I'm really excited to talk about some things I can't talk about, but some of the work that we do with the gallery and with other clients in terms of using deep, hardcore technology and really bring it to life in really tangible kind of ways, and how AI might completely change the way we interact with art. Looking forward.
Great. Thank you and welcome to all of our speakers. Really excited to have you all here and bringing various different lenses. So this is going to be an exciting conversation. To start off, as we were thinking about this topic and really starting to unpack it, and we'll see AI as an industry, and as we've been seeing the trends of AI and really AI growing, we were struck by a few very interesting examples, and shortly you'll see on the screen sort of the large numbers that AI is really bringing. But the examples that we were really struck by as we were doing our research, in June 2022, a small group of cosmopolitan editors, OpenAI researchers, digital artists, and an award-winning director, Karen Ching, worked together, for less than an hour to just provide some written prompts. And that was the start of really generating the first ever AI-generated magazine cover. And it only took 20 seconds to do that. A process that has taken, that traditionally, I mean, many of us that may have seen The Devil Wears Prada, we've seen the kind of things that go into magazines and the covers. But it's interesting to see how collaborators from different fields could come together to create something in such a short period of time that could be really powerful. Another example, the portrait of Edmund de Bellamy holds the Guinness Book of World Record for the highest price paid at an auction for an artwork created using artificial intelligence. And it's almost close to $500,000. And that's really amazing to think about the users who traditionally are paying for artwork that could be quite different, that has a story of an artist behind it, even appreciating and putting that kind of price tag and value over something that was created from artificial intelligence. And so those were a couple examples that struck us. And I think to begin with, what I'd love to hear from each of the panelists is, what are some trends or ideas that you're seeing emerging in the creative landscape with the rise of generative AI? What are some things that are striking you? Kay, maybe I'll come to you first.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. So, it is extremely exciting time. And I must say, we've just been working a lot with Roblox over the last year. We've created a game called Sky Farm Island, all about vertical farming set in Singapore. And wow, it is supercharging our process. So when the little player, for example, goes to the hawker center to get their quest, everything that you see in relation to the conversation that happens with the player and the hawker has all been generated by AI using ChatGPT. So that really, really ignited our process. Further, though, even just on the Roblox blog, you can start to read about all of the new AI that they are incorporating into their platform. Things that enable everyone, they say, everyone can become a creator. Everyone can build the game as they are playing it. Now, these AI tools are just quite rudimentary now. So speaking to our developers, they're kind of like, yeah, they're not amazingly polished yet, but wow, in a very short space of time, they are going to be really, really powerful. So that even someone like me, who has no background in game development or 3D asset creation, can also get involved. So that's really exciting. Another thing I'm seeing, though, is, I'm sure maybe lots of people have also seen that DALL-E has now been incorporated into ChatGPT. So now ChatGPT isn't just a words machine. It is also now going to give platforms like Midjourney a run for their money. So really, really exciting there. But the third thing I'm kind of seeing, though, which is kind of like, here it all comes, is George R.R. Martin, creator of Game of Thrones, with a bunch of other authors actually saying, you know what, this has to stop. This is not allowed. I cannot believe that this systemic theft on a massive scale is being allowed to happen. ChatGPT, king of AI, is robber of words. So those are three kind of things that I'm kind of seeing. I'd love to hear from who else has got some cool stuff that they're seeing.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, I think the ethics of it and artists really coming out for their creative freedoms being infringed on is an exciting piece. Professor, maybe I'll come to you next in terms of what you're seeing.
Okay. I agree with Kay. AI, everybody can be a creator, with AI. But of course, if everybody is using the same thing to create the same thing, then you lose the uniqueness. And I think arts is about diversity and uniqueness. And I think so. There's a check and balance there. But in terms of technology, I think my word of advice is never underestimate. I am the one who underestimated the AI myself last year when they released the ChatGPT. I was really blown away. In fact, a lot of my PhD students are worried about their future because it seems like all this AI has solved most of everything they have been trying to solve previously. So we are really in a turning point in AI, generative AI. I think we'll continue to see further surprises, hopefully pleasant ones. So we talk about AI in text, so generate words, and AI in images that you've seen here. But of course, there's nothing to stop it from generating audio. We have seen deepfake actually earlier on that it can imitate the audio very realistically, as well as video, right? It can move on to dynamic content. So I think AI will continue to push the frontier. Then I guess the big question is what differentiates human from AI? What is art? What is human art, creativity versus automated algorithmic statistical creativity? I believe there's a big difference, but we can talk about that later. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And we do see AI taking leaps and bounds. And on the previous panel, I'd heard someone say, today AI is a baby. So imagine when it's a toddler, imagine what happens then. So really, really looking forward to the conversation. Greg, maybe I'll come to you next to think about the
Yes,
users.
sure thing. Gosh, I've got so much to share. I'm trying to already edit myself, and I need to use ChatGPT to give me 10 top things that I can say. There's just so much to talk about. I think I love that phrase, statistical creativity. I think that's a huge risk for us that we drive things down into what is the most popular and the easiest thing to do. But some of the trends that we're seeing are, yes, absolutely, we use Gen AI here at NCS to help us do our jobs a lot better and a lot faster. Takes away a lot of the baseline drudge repetitive work and frees up our people to really be themselves and use their minds in those really human kind of ways. So we're loving that for a start. But I think what's fascinating for me is giving the more that we use Gen AI to produce the baseline things, the more powerful and the more intense the real human things become. So Taylor Swift, great example, right? One person can get out there and do show after show after show and just absolutely be the one thing that you can be when you're Taylor Swift. All right. And people pay big money to go to those shows at the same time as being able to stream the music pretty much for free on Spotify. All right. So the more real things become more intense and more valuable to us as humans. From a sci-fi point of view, for real people, I think that there's two ends of the spectrum. One is that Gen AI is going to take humanity out of the equation because we're a distraction and a problem for it, trying to control it. The other option is that the more we use it, the more it actually gives us time to be ourselves and to be really, really human, right? Which leads us more to art, more to music, and more to expressing ourselves. So we'll have to see where that ends up. And later on, there's that very specific question about how do we use Gen AI in a museum context or an art context to bring art to life for us and help us understand what we're seeing. And I think that's some amazing work to be done there and great experiences.
Great, thanks, Greg, and looking forward to that. And for our audience, we'll shortly have a poll question pop up because we want to hear from you as well. We want to hear if you've been having some experiences with Gen AI yourself and where you are. So while that is popping up, and it should be a simple one, while you're putting your answers in there, I'll come back to you, Professor. And I'm curious, sort of given your experiences with, of course, academia, the technology itself, right? Which many of us may not understand. I certainly don't understand the deep technology piece of it at all. How do you envision generative AI could change the way people create, their creative endeavors? You talked a little bit in your intro about, audio and sort of, and the way things have been moving and images and things like that. But I'm curious to hear. And I see that our audience is actually quite split. We're about 55% who have used Gen AI in art, and about 45% not. So it's a really interesting audience mix today as well. But Professor, tell us how you see the creative world changing with AI.
Sure. I'm glad to see like almost half have used generative AI in here. So that's an indication. I think the key point, my view, is that it democratizes the art to the creation of art to more people. So we can see maybe from the internet era, right? Previously, a novelist or whatever must have access to publisher and gets, it's very hard. There's very few channel for artists or the budding artists to really express themselves. So with the internet era, you can see more and more people are able to, a lot of content create or artistic content actually come from the people from the ground, from the hidden artists in every one of us. And these are with the help of not the platform itself, but also with tools, right? Because you have more efficient search tools. You may have, Photoshops and stuff like that to create that. Yeah. So that's one. I think it will lead to democratization of artistic creation expression to more people. I think, but again, you notice now we take photograph with our mobile phone, and our filters and all this actually make a very nice photo. But then on the other hand, you still can't beat the best human photographer. I think if we submit our photograph that we take on our travel photograph, I don't think we'll win the prize. So there's still something humanistic, right? And artistic that is of value, that's yeah. The AI cannot, well, at the moment, it's not designed to do that. I mentioned earlier, all this AI is statistical. So basically, imagine you have, your child have read everything on the internet and learn by itself about the ways of things and knowledge, then your child will be very knowledgeable. But on the other hand, your child, what he or she has learned is everything, but everything is not good actually in art. You want to be unique, you want to be special, you want to, you're not statistical being. So there's a difference between human creativity, I believe. I'm not an arts person, and statistical creativity or machine generated creativity. So the current AI is good at that. In fact, if you think about it, it is trained on the basic principle of predicting the next word or the missing word or missing pixel by looking at a lot of things, right? And the surprising thing is that if you build a big enough machine and learn to learn this very simple mechanism, actually it can generate, there's a reason why you call it generative AI, not creative AI, because it generates by statistical guessing, right? And statistical guessing means it is based on something you've seen before, but in a certain variation. So it's not like memorizing things. So you see some creativity there, but it's still based on something it has seen before, right? But that is the current state of the art. I presume it can lead to further creativity, but it's not designed as that now. Yeah. So I feel that in the end, it will be a very good productivity tool. It's a tool that open up more access to budding artists like us to create more things. And it's also a productivity tool maybe for the artists themselves, for information gathering, idea generation. Greg was telling you asked most of us are ChatGPT. What's the top 10 impact AI can bring to art? But then if we do all of us do that, then this panel will be very boring, right? We'll be saying this similar things and general things that everybody know, but we will have no personal perspective. That's why I refrained myself from doing that. I didn't ask ChatGPT. So so I feel that I think it was mentioned earlier. We shouldn't be afraid of this AI part. It helps a lot of us create prettier things, nicer things, artistic things. But at the same time, it also make the human touch more valuable. It also push the artist to be even more creative than something that can be easily generated, or not easily, that can be generated by a computer. So I think it leads to further boundary for the human side. At the same time, me from an AI side will also push that boundary. So it's a race there, but it's all for the good cause. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've also heard AI and ChatGPT referenced as an over-enthusiastic intern. So it'll give you a base, and then you have to go through the checks and balances from there on.
True. It's also quite boring, actually. It doesn't have a personality, but we can fix that. But
yeah, I was going to say it's not yet. So that's where
yes.
the evolution comes into play. Okay, maybe I'll come to you next, because I think what you raised even in your intro in terms of the ethics of it, and in the example of George R.R. Martin is really vivid to a lot of folks that are fans. But how have you seen, the advancements in AI, large language models? How can that be harnessed, I guess, responsibly to create content that doesn't really infringe on someone's creative sort of freedoms, intellectual property? There are a lot of legal standings around it, and I think the laws may take a bit of time. But how can that be used responsibly?
That's the golden question, and there isn't actually. I don't think we have an answer just yet, unfortunately. I think everyone's heard of the game Grand Theft Auto. Well, what's actually happened is kind of Grand Theft data on a massive scale, and so that's what George R.R. Martin and everyone are kind of like. You come from that perspective of. We know we so feel it that it's so easy to kind of see that you have actually used our texts, etc. But there is surely hope on the horizon. Lots and lots, as we saw the statistic earlier, loads of new bills are being passed all around the world, and every country, many countries are looking at exactly this. How can we create flexible regulatory frameworks that are going to grow alongside the tools? How are we going to create AI acts that actually foster innovation, but also safeguard that public interest? And it's really hard because we are still even in the depths of understanding, well, what is actually fair use? Even there's a bunch of 8 individuals who have already sued Google. It's still going through the courts, right? So we still don't have the answers to all of these things. Fair use, therefore, is, Google is saying, well, it's kind of transformational, isn't it? We're not actually, we're repurposing these copyrighted works, and these things are in the public domain. So we're not just spitting them out. We're certainly not stealing them. Theft actually is very much taking something and never intending to give it back. We're not doing that. We're just using all of this publicly available information to train our models to, as Professor was saying, know what next word should be, for example. But it's very, very difficult. Well, now I feel that there is surely hope on the horizon. I read this really cool article it's like kind of called Engines of Wow in Wired. And inside there, they said, look, in future, there is hope on the horizon. Today's models are having to be trained on, for example, like 100 million data points. There is hope in the future that maybe some of these models can just be trained on maybe 10,000 data points, which means it will be very, very much easier in a transparent world to identify whether or not your stick figure drawing, or mine, because I'm not very good at art, has actually been used to train that model. And therefore, there could be a way to identify you and therefore offer you some kind of remuneration. Now, what that remuneration can possibly be, though, is still the jury's out, because how do I know that, for example, my stick figure, but Shreya's, amazing, beautiful painting was used to generate this new thing that we've created together. And so, you know, oil painting meets stick figure, amazing creation from Kay and Sreya. Well, how much of Shreya's work is in there? Was it 90%? Or was actually Kay's stick figure? No, that was 90%. So out of the $1 I'm going to pay you, well, which one of us gets 90 cents? Hang on a minute, you know, so then it's like, and times that by all of the other people waiting in line with their cap and being like, I want to be paid too. So it's a minefield, and we are still kind of trying to figure it out. But we do need fundamentally some key things, which are, you know, transparency. We have absolutely no idea as a man in the street what kind of data has actually been used to train OpenAI, ChatGPT, and all these other models. So that would be kind of interesting to know. At the same time, though, what are we going to do with that data if no government around the world has actually said, well, the creator, the original creator of that piece, whether that's words, you know, images, video, etc., should now get this. So it's still a kind of, yeah, unfortunate minefield, but hopefully humanity will get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complicated mix. I think even negotiations in life without AI are complicated. So I can't imagine this. But thank you for sharing that. And we'll, audience, we'll have another poll popping up for you shortly. And as we have that poll popping up, Greg, I'll start the voiceover, my question to you, and hopefully the audience's responses will help you inform where the audience is coming from. But I think, you know, whether we're all creators of art or not can be debated, but we can all be appreciators of art. We can all be users of it. So as we're thinking about that experience, you know, how might AI-guided interactions transform sort of the way that we engage with art, and potentially even, you know, like break down barriers, create more personalized experiences or immersive experiences? How is the experience itself going to change for the individuals as users? And as you saw in the Q&A also, there was a question about, specifically in the museum context, how is that going to change? And we can see our audience, you know, AI definitely is an experience that many of us are engaging with. I mean, majority of our audience has had a chance to engage with it. So curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's such a broad question. And, you know, I've got some personal stories to bring in as we talk. I think your point about we can't all be creators of art. Now we kind of can, which is a whole nother story. But can we all be appreciators of art? So I've met one or two people in my time who are probably congenitally like unable to appreciate art. Right, they generally just look at it and go, what a waste of time. But most people have some form of appreciation of art. Now, it usually starts at the level of, my goodness, look at the craft there, right? You go and you see a Rembrandt in the flesh, and you just go, how the hell, honestly, how do you capture light in such a way just using your hand? Absolutely astonishing. So you can start there, and everyone can say, yes, we appreciate that. Look at the size and the scale of this piece of art. And then I take my teenage children to Venice on a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and a couple of things happen. We go to the P. Guggenheim collection in Venice, and there's a beautiful Jackson Pollock piece of drip art there. 2 out of 3 of the kids go, what the hell, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. How dare he do something like this out of nowhere when we've just seen, you know, the Rembrandts and the other things. This guy came out of nowhere and just exploded and paint all over the place. The third child looks at this and says, I could have done that. All right. And so straight away we're into what is appreciation of art, and how do we actually understand it when all we're faced with is the piece. All right. So what we're looking for is ways that generative AI can be used to help explain what you're feeling when you see this, which is an incredibly complex human-based thing to do. Right. And it's made of multi levels. In terms of things like, what kind of personality could we give to an AI docent? All right, when you go to see some art, is it better that you are helped by a generative AI guide that is extremely formal and well-trained? Is that helpful for you? Or do you want to be sort of told the story by someone who's more of a street rapper? Right, get a load of this, it's more like that. It depends on your mood on the day and your ability to take in and connect the stories that you're hearing. All right, so it becomes even more tricky when we look at generative AI kind of work and things like the Soul Machines. I don't know if any of you have bumped into Soul Machines. It's a New Zealand-based company. I know them from a long time back, being a Kiwi myself. Their job is to try and figure out how to help the machines interpret your intent. Right? So chatbots, famous story, the difference between I feel like an idiot and I feel like a cup of tea. It's very hard for the machines to figure out the intent behind what you're asking for. So when we go into an art space and we have a generative AI guide talk to you about a piece of art, your next question is the most important thing that it's looking for. What do we do with that next question? So you might have a situation where you have an audio guide. Typically, most audio guides are pre-recorded and static, right, and in one language. If we have an audio guide that can actually reach into the database, pull it out and deliver it to you in a certain way, that might help you a lot, help you understand what you're seeing. The first level it will give you, of course, is the painting is this big. It was painted in this year by this person with this intent using these tools. So far, so good. But what if you can then ask it, what is the person in the painting looking at? And none of us can see what the person in the painting is looking at. What will the generative AI tool do with that question? Where will it take you? All right? It can start a conversation with you and say, well, let's talk about the kind of things it might be looking at. What kind of things do you like to look at? Can I show you other pieces of art in this situation or in this museum? Okay, and let's take you on a tour. Once we know that, we can use the Gen AI to understand how often you've been here, what you've seen, what you're into, and then we can challenge you. Yeah, you really love figurative paintings, but come and look at this sculpture. Let's take you out of your comfort zone and see if we can, bend your mind a bit in that kind of direction. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the AI guidance kind of work going. There's a lot of intent comprehension. But the challenges that we face in that kind of space are very much, and Prof, you'll know this, the hallucinations and the chaos and trying to keep the guides on the guide rails. We've been working on a piece of work with the gallery, which we've tested, and we can throw questions at it like, yeah, I like this painting, but I like Donald Trump better. And we're trying to push it and see where it goes. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah, I think that's a lot of what I wanted to cover off there. Where I'd love to see things go is the ability to talk to a group at different levels. So again, my kid's a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old fine artist. 12-year-old just loves drawing. 17-year-old is fully trained. But we see the same piece of work. If we've all got audio guides, how can they get a different level of interpretation that we can then all talk over dinner later, right? So good fun, good stuff.
That sounds amazing. That sounds like a really, really interesting sort of future state, or almost in a way where it is generative, but it's also personalized to an extent where it's sparking a conversation even internally for you in a very different way. I really like that. I see some questions coming in from the audience, and I'll shortly open up for more as well. But maybe one last question from me that I'd love to hear. And for me, it's kind of you've touched on it throughout your answers across the different questions today, but it's a personal topic for me. It's one that I think about a lot. I think given the potential for both, creation as well as the consumption of art and everything we've talked about, how could we ensure accessibility, inclusivity in the adoption of these technologies, particularly when you think about different socioeconomic and cultural contexts, right? Because we're across the globe, and I saw a question also in the chat about this. But how do you think we can ensure that there is that inclusion and that intentionality in the way things are being powered? Professor, maybe I'll come to you first.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it takes time, but there's nothing to stop it from being accessible by everybody. So take an example of mobile phone, right? in the beginning, it was very expensive and a few have it, but now everybody has it, right? Everybody uses it everywhere. So actually technology, generally the cost of technology, I mean, the focus on research is to reduce the cost. So to make it affordable, and so far all this technology has not been prohibitive. I mean, we do not, I mean, so I don't see this generative AI going that trend too. It seems to be, if you, well, I'm not from OpenAI, but the subscription is a bit expensive, but they're free version, and so on. So all of us have access to them. So I think cost will not be a factor. Tend to be unlikely the factor in the so-called digital world. We tend to be more, how to say, go for the mass profit rather than a few, right? So now maybe the so-called the usability or the knowledge to use this technology may be a barrier of entry. But again, I take mobile phone and all this. I think again, I think user interface and all this traditionally in digitalization in all this internet, mobile phone, it has been towards this make it easy for use by the mass. So and ChatGPT and all this being language based is the easiest and most natural human interface. So I don't see that there is a barrier there. So I feel that it will actually benefit, or the accessibility will be for I mean everybody. I think I don't see it designed to exclude certain groups of people. Yeah.
Okay, Greg, do you want to weigh in?
Oh, no, covered off beautifully by the professor there in terms of accessibility, apart from the classic accessibilities of lack of hearing, lack of vision, that sort of thing, which can be overcome by translating from one format to the other. I think that it's a tough question. The ability to translate the content or the message that you want to get into a particular person's context is probably a very important part of accessibility. And we know from our work at the gallery, again, looking at the types of visitors who come to the gallery and cut them into three very separate groups, right? People who visit the gallery because it's a beautiful building, or about them, they come anyway. But people who love art and people who feel obliged to come and look at the art for reasons, right? Whether they must be a person of culture. My kids have to look at the art for school. Oh my God, I've got nothing to do with the kids this weekend. I just have to go and I'm stuck, right? But in that group, there are a whole bunch of people who come in with zero comprehension of what they are supposed to take out of the visit. And that can be from all sorts of reasons, right? Extreme lack of interest through school for attention deficit reasons, or for the reasons that they're fully disengaged from society anyway. How do you use generative AI to build a story that brings them in and says, dispossessed or uncomfortably personality people can become incredible artists and have a great voice in society? And, how do we go in that sort of direction? That's a huge inclusivity question for us to answer. Yeah.
No, I think that's great, and I think the question in the Q&A is also an interesting one. So I'll come to that. But Kay, maybe I'll come to you on my question first to wrap it up.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think everyone, celebrates so much the fact that there were 100 million people who signed up to ChatGPT in the first week. Wow. But no one really ever talks about almost 3 billion people who still have never accessed the internet to today. So, in terms of accessibility, we still do have quite a way to go. And secondly, don't forget that therefore all of those 3 billion people have never had their public data also stolen in the Grand Theft Data debacle, because they've never been on there. That also means therefore that unfortunately, if I'm looking for something perhaps slightly esoteric, like I don't know, mash together this modern style painting with Laotian ceramics, the AI machine is probably going to be like, okay, I've probably in my data set got maybe a handful, 5 maybe, if I'm lucky, Laotian ceramics photos that I can kind of draw on, but they're not going to create for you anything that is even near to if you actually physically went to Laos and then went around this amazing ceramics shop and really understood the human craft that has been involved in creating that object, right? So we do have to hopefully have slightly more diverse data inputs into our machines, and not just like blindly, happily be using them all day long. Isn't this amazing? It's so fantastic. But forgetting that it's trained on a lot of data that's been created, sorry, Greg, nothing, but by white males, right? We still do have quite a way to go. And obviously being based in Asia, we need to have better Asian representation, not only on the internet, but also creators being like, cool, hey, please use my things too. It can't just be a bunch of white creators from the West who are dominating the outputs, because, for my kids, Greg's kids, it's going to be them then being educated that like, oh yeah, that it's the AI spat out this amazing thing. But remember, not even being taught and being told at school, this is not representative data, children. We need to make sure that there are, greater diversity, hopefully, and that will happen. But also, I just wanted to pick up on really something interesting that Greg said earlier about the kind of Jackson Pollock versus Rembrandt stuff. Also, I'm sure faced with a Rothko, those completely black paintings, for example, like, kids were like, yep, what even is that? Why is that? But the reason is because if you look at the story behind the Rothko, he only created those black paintings in the year before he committed suicide. Everything he had done previous to that was an exploration in mental fragility, obviously his. But so before that black period, he was doing things like hot colors, cold colors, vertical representation, horizontal. What does all of this mean? Because it was coming from his mind. And so that the AI can never truly recreate that, because it doesn't have feelings. It doesn't think, as Professor was saying earlier, it doesn't have any kind of like mental thing going on in there. It doesn't have a personality. So it will be very, very interesting to see what unveils, especially when it comes to, works that are put inside museums, which actually then, it's, oh, wait, it was created by an AI, isn't it amazing? It's like, yeah, but what's the story behind it? Where's the human connection there? Where's that exploration, for example, of Rothko's mental fragility there? So that'll be very interesting to kind of see unfold. But as I said, yeah, diverse data sets, very important to keep that inclusivity and accessibility going. Thank you.
That's amazing, and that's a really good launching point. As we're talking about diverse data sets, actually a very interesting question from Spartacus from Brazil about indigenous communities and the fact that they have such a rich culture. How can we protect these communities from cultural appropriation through AI? Because anyone could use AI, and the hypothetical example that you gave, Kay, as well, to create something without actually having the lived experience or without actually having enough data, in a sense. So missing both of those pieces. And how could we really protect these communities from another round of sort of appropriation because of these tech tools that are generating, material that isn't coming from them necessarily? I'll open up to anyone that'll like to weigh in.
I'm just reading the question again. That's incredibly tough, isn't it? I wonder if there's while as Kay was talking about earlier, while we're waiting for some of the legal stoushes to kind of play out in court and get some proper protections in place, these things will happen. I wonder if there's a more technological tool that we can apply here, and more in the blockchain space or provability space, that we can apply in line to the data before it hits the generative tools. So that it can be, we're talking about fractional payments, so we can actually track when those things are being used to generate any kind of income, and we can divert that income right back to the source. But actual
Yeah, I agree. It's an absolute minefield because, you know, you could say, well, on the flip side, haven't like loads of other people, non-Westerners, been appropriating Western culture for the longest time, right? The fact that we all wear jeans and, you know, and that, you know, et cetera, et cetera. There's such a massive list, right? So it's like cultural appropriation is such a minefield topic. Like, even if, you know, some extremely sensitive people will say, well, you know, why should Kay, based in Singapore, be celebrating the Day of the Dead with a Mexican sombrero on her head? How freaking dare she? You know, that's not part of her culture, you know, so it depends on how far you want to go. And because we haven't even solved the issue of just kind of everyday creators saying like, well, hang on a minute, my book has been appropriated here, my painting, etc. When it gets down to that kind of like, oh, cultural theft, etc., that's really, really hard, because ultimately, if you also don't want to be part of the machines, then we all suffer. Because if your indigenous data doesn't get to be part of these machines, then I'm not, you know, as a child, for example, using these machines in an education setting, when I generate something, it's not going to have any Brazilian representation, indigenous tribal representation at the moment, because there's hardly anything there. But we kind of want it to be there because of diversity. At the same time, we want to be extremely respectful that we don't stray into that, you know, terrible cultural appropriation minefield. So it's about kind of like trying to balance along the, you know, the tightrope and try not to get it wrong. But I don't think that there's an easy answer here at all.
Am I supposed to say something?
Please say that.
Okay. I like Kay's explanation about that black painting before. So I think arts and all this cultural thing, I think it's the human story behind it. The machine is always a machine. It can replicate the thing, but it will never live a human life. It will never have a human story behind it. Therein lies the value of the thing that it replicates. Yeah. So I think there's no way, right? And then there are other things about arts. Okay, it's one of its kind. It's a physical thing, right? And then there's story behind. I mean, all these, you know, the machine can reproduce, can photocopy, or can modify it, but there's no, you know, it's not unique. And then there's no, I think the key thing is the human story behind it. It doesn't have the human experience. It's a machine, and you will never have, I can tell you as a computer science professor, you will never live a human life, okay? So you will never have that we have. So that I think that's the art. And then I think in the end, the creativity of arts and the value of culture will be very based on all this human experience, which is a good thing, because then, like Kay has said, it also helped the rest of us understand all this low resource, I mean low, you know, culture. We know we understand it a little bit, we access to it more. But again, the human part becomes more and more valuable because the machine can so easily create it, and then the human part is more important. So but I may be, because I'm a technologist, I'm defending my technology, but I think as a human being, I think it's a good thing. In fact, I can tell you from the research perspective, we are also facing a challenge. We are worried that our PhD students just ask ChatGPT and generate a PhD thesis. You know, what about all of us who spend 10 years, you know, trying to study that? But I think in the end, it's the experience, right? You know, it's a learning experience that the PhD students has gotten, and it can carry on for the rest of his career, his or her career. So I think you know, it actually accentuates and increases the importance of being human, while at the same time the technology democratize and give more access to the you know, lesser resource previously. Yeah. So that's my point. I don't know if it's too controversial, but I think it's a good thing. And I think all of us should participate in this. So maybe I'll ask you, all of you, a controversial question. I feel I need to defend the machine a little bit. So, you know, you're thinking about stealing and all this, but what about an art student? An art student study all the previous artist's work, right? So in the brain, you absorb all these things and then you generate again. You might have elements of Picasso and all this. So should this artist be sued by the Picasso family and all this? So I think it's very unfair for the machine. The machine is just doing all these things too, in a sense, and then it absorbs and all this, right? So this is a controversy. I ask all of you back, So are you being unfair to the machine, right? We're saying that, oh, you must, give, credits, to whatever pieces of things that you've learned on your way to become you at this stage to generate that piece of, artifact, that you must do that, I think it's just following similar pathway that human being learn. Okay, I think I'm getting myself in trouble here, but this is a discussion.
No, not at all. I think no. I mean, I think absolutely valid point. I love the question. I think I also feel that same way. Whereby, can we not just see the machine as digital inspiration?
Yeah.
It's the same, right? As you said, if I go to look at the Picasso and I come home in the afternoon and I do my drawing and it happens to look a bit more Picasso-esque because of my experience in the museum. Now, though, I think what people are railing against is not so much the machine, but it's the people that are owning the machines and creating the machines. And then, as you said at the beginning, charging a fair amount of money for the use of those machines, so that yeah, great, ChatGPT 3.5 is free for all, but it's not as good as when you pay for it. It's noticeably better when you pay for it. So in that sense, and therefore, if someone or some people as a company are profiting from this, then how can we then ensure that fair compensation takes place for the people who own the inputs for those machines? It's not railing against the machine itself. It's more about, well, OpenAI, when are you actually going to create, for example, a universal basic income for all of the people's publicly available data that you used in relation to training your machine? Yeah.
I mean, that would be the ideal solution, but I'll counter that with another controversial point. So if you look at internet, I mean, so we are focusing on the profit that the company makes on that, but we should also look at the benefits that it brings to us, right? So, and balance that. So like internet, they also take all our data and then just link up all our data and then create all these search engines, and then we use a certain free version of it, and then it profits by advertising, but it brings a lot of convenience for us. It helps us get through COVID, where we can do e-commerce at home and be very happy with our shopping experience, while even though we cannot go out, right? So it does bring benefits. So I feel that when people look at this kind of okay, we should charge this and all that, we should balance it with the other social good or benefits that we also enjoy, and then realize, well, maybe there's no need to pay, or maybe but this is a fairness, but somebody would also decide. But to me, as a technology creator, I feel that actually it did bring other things that people tend to ignore when they talk about the pricing, right? That it also brings other benefit. We all enjoy this technology, right? Yeah. Sorry, I think I will not be invited back next time. And
no,
not
at all.
I'm a technology person. I need to defend my technology.
But that's it, and that's why it's an interesting catch-22, right? Because the technology does help us. We do use it. We do embrace it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it does require those guardrails. It requires some of those mechanisms to come into place. So it is an interesting conversation, and in my mind, a really important one to have, because I don't think there's a way to shy away from not using the technology. So you have to find ways to work together. And I think in your conversation, you actually covered some of the other questions around empathy and the coexistence of human creativity and statistical creativity. I realize we're at time, but I do want to take one more question from the Q&A before we wrap it up. We have a question here. In what ways can traditional painters and/or music producers use generative AI to effectively communicate the issues of art, music sustainability to a broader audience? I just think, any ideas or anything that you've seen sort of work effectively in these two realms?
Wow. I'm a writer, so I keep going back to the use of language and the ability to instantly translate into another space for people to actually share your story with a much wider universe, right? Musically, I don't know. Stuck with that one. Music producers. Just the question again. I'll just reread that one quick last time. Always can traditional painters and or music producers use Gen AI to communicate the issues of art and music sustainability to a broader audience? I'm tempted to answer a really complicated network kind of way that says if we can generate at scale highly personalized messaging through the music, so that the song that you hear is different to the one that that Kay hears or that Prof hears, and it becomes personal to you, and then suddenly you will discover that this was really important to you, but it was different to someone else. Does that help us understand how precious individual experience can become? And I'm really lost with where I'm going with that discussion.
Yeah, I can weigh in a little bit. I mean, I think in relation to, if you're a traditional oil painter, for example, and you're just trying to be like, well, am I losing relevance in this crazy world when, I don't know, all the young people are into like either street art or these kind of crazy new things, or wouldn't it be so cool if I could see my traditional art on a pair of shoes or something in a store? Gen AI is now able, through a series of prompts, or even, with ChatGPT now, you don't even have to write, you can just use voice, but just talking at the machine to be like, if I was to try to appeal to a younger generation with my oil painting, how could I do it? And so that's perhaps one way that the AI could help you to stay relevant in a kind of changing world, perhaps.
Oh, I'll have the last word. Okay. Actually, I don't quite understand the question, but okay, I can share with you a project that I wanted to get into, but it was pre-ChatGPT. Okay, so I was working with a drama group, so they want to use a chatbot back then as a character to interact with the actor, and then I think the scenario is more like those impromptu kind of drama sports kind of event. But back then was before ChatGPT, so my chatbot is so boring and it's so predictable. It's very, but now I think the chatbot is very good. So I think you can bounce ideas, or you can be a sparring partner. It can either be your assistant or that, right? So it can help the artist practice or try out things in that sense. Now, second one about maybe image or accessibility to all. I feel that for example, in our photograph app now, you can always turn your photograph to a Picasso painting style or something like that. So that's accessibility. And I think more of us understood Picasso because we play with that, and the difference between the other artists, and Rembrandt or whatever, right? So that's actually indirectly help us understand the concept of some of these art. So I think maybe that kind of answer that sustainability part, accessibility. But I will counter that with the last one about music. So I feel music is the best language of human being emotion. Yeah. So I think even human composer cannot predict and write like a piece of block, whatever, top chart, a song that speaks to everybody, right? But there are music creator, like the Beethoven and all these people that can create, they have a knack to do that, right? They know what everybody wants in our heart. And I think this is something that, again, based on life experience, unique life experience, based on something more about human that I think currently the statistical machine is not trained to produce. So I feel that music is probably the last frontier. Greg, I do not know if I want to hear a personalized. Actually, I want to hear Taylor Swift like everybody hear her. I don't want to hear my own Taylor Swift. In fact, I want everybody to be in a stadium to listen to her singing one song, right? So there's something about all this human experience, human social experience that ChatGPT generative AI can help, but will not replace the human experience, I think. Yeah.
Great.
So that's my last word.
Thank you so much. It's been a really exciting conversation. I definitely could have gone on for a bit more, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you so much for taking out time from your schedules to help us talk through this topic. We'd love to have you back for more conversations. And for the audience, thank you all for dialing in from various different parts, as we saw in your Q&A. Really happy for having you engaged in this conversation. Please do take a moment to fill in the couple of questions of feedback so we're able to understand what you appreciated from the conversation and bring you more such conversations with various different speakers. Really looking forward to continuing more of this. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.